Welcome everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again. This is the account with today's news report on the war in Ukraine for day 336. Today there is a lot of hype around the decision to send Western main battle tanks to Ukraine. We have some additional information on that during the Tanks for Ukraine segment. There is also one article I want to highlight. Otherwise, there were only some minor news, so I grouped them into the usual situation inside Ukraine, with updates regarding the corruption scandal, the occupied territories, Russia and Belarus, with a curious event on Russian television, and the international developments. And before we start the report, a quick congratulatory message. President Volodymyr Zelensky celebrated his 45th birthday today. His wife, the First Lady Olena Zelenska, posted a picture of the couple and stated, "He hasn't changed. He's the same guy I met when we were 17. Happy birthday, President Volodymyr Zelensky." Before we start the report, we have some breaking news. Air raid sirens are sounding in Ukraine. Tonight, air raid sirens sounded throughout Ukraine. Several reports of flying Shahed drones were posted online. Explosions were reported in the regional capitals of Kherson, Dnipro and Zaporizhia. And now to start the report, the flashpoints along the front. Soledar. It is now official, Soledar is occupied by Russia. The armed forces of Ukraine withdrew from Soledar in the direction of Bakhmut in order to save the lives of personnel. Bakhmut. Heavy fighting continues all around Bakhmut. Russian attacks were repelled around Krasnohora, Bakhmut, Klishchivka and Kurdyumivka. Volodar. Russia has launched a new major offensive. Claims that Russian units captured parts of the settlement have proven to be false. Russian forces are, however, putting pressure on Volodar. Ukrainian military reports Russian units refuse to follow orders after heavy losses. And now the article by the Ukrainska Pravda I want to point out, titled, "This pain will never go away. We'll just learn to live with it. Stories of the fallen soldiers' wives who founded a community." When their husbands fell in battle, 5 wives founded a private help and support community called My Razom, We Are Together. While strangers at first, their experience brought them together and resulted in close friendships. The article tells the stories of those who lost their husbands and the support they found in one another. Please check out the article. And to start the news segment, the latest on the Tanks for Ukraine situation. Today, the German government announced that Germany will provide the Ukrainian armed forces with Leopard 2 main battle tanks. In the first phase, Germany will provide a company of 14 Leopard 2 A6 tanks from the Bundeswehr. Additionally, Germany will provide partner countries willing to send their Leopard tanks to Ukraine with a permit to do so. According to the German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, it will take about 3 months for the first tanks to arrive. Overall, the European partners of Ukraine plan to send 80 main battle tanks, which would be enough to equip 2 tank battalions. Bjørn Arild Gram, Minister of Defense of Norway, has confirmed that his country will send an unspecified number of its Leopard tanks to Ukraine. Portugal, meanwhile, is preparing to send 4 of its 37 Leopard tanks to Ukraine. Spanish Defense Minister Margarita Robles stated Madrid intends to act in coordination with its Western allies on the Leopards for Ukraine matter. The Minister of Defense of Sweden, Paul Jonsson, meanwhile said he does not rule out sending Stridsvagn 122, a Swedish modification of the Leopard 2A5, to Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky has thanked Germany for the decision to finally allow the transfer of Leopard tanks to Ukraine. During a phone call with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Zelensky also officially received confirmation for the tanks. Several European politicians and diplomats have thanked Germany for the decision as well. On the other hand, reactions from Russia were less favorable. The Russian embassy in Germany called the decision extremely dangerous and a new level of confrontation. Konstantin Gavrilov, head of the Russian delegation in Vienna at the OSCE Forum on Military Security and Arms Control, said Russia will view the use of Leopard tanks the same way as using a dirty bomb. He stated, "We are aware that the Leopard 2 tanks as well as the Bradley and Marder infantry fighting vehicles are armed with sub-caliber armor-piercing shells with uranium cores. the use of which leads to contamination of the area as it happened in Yugoslavia and Iraq. If Kyiv is supplied with such shells for NATO heavy military equipment, we will consider it to be the use of dirty nuclear bombs against Russia with all the ensuing consequences. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden officially announced that the USA will send 31 Abrams tanks to Ukraine as well. This is enough to equip another tank battalion. And now for the latest news out of Ukraine. The Ukrainian Prosecutor General Andriy Kostin has dismissed an additional 5 head regional prosecutors amidst the ongoing reshuffle. Bohdan Khmelnytsky, the director of the Procurement Department of the Ministry of Defense, has been dismissed from his post. Valery Zaluzhni, the commander-in-chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, called for a thorough investigation but advised everyone not to blame the leaders for their subordinates' failures. President Volodymyr Zelensky has signed a law increasing sentences and fines for desertion and disobeying orders. A look at the situation in the occupied territories. The Mariupol City Council has reported a massive explosion at barracks located in Mariupol where over 200 Russian soldiers were stationed. No further information is currently available. The Russian BBC has managed to identify and confirm the death of 92 soldiers killed in Makiivka. While the list is incomplete, the number is already higher than what the Russian Ministry of Defense reported. Russian authorities have stopped paying social welfare in the occupied Zaporizhia Oblast, leaving residents without money. Allegedly, there is an acute lack of Russian rubles. Additionally, Energoatom reported that Russian authorities are trying to recruit 150 Belarusian repair workers for the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. Moving on to the latest updates from Russia and Belarus. In Belgorod Oblast, Russia, and in Russian-occupied Crimea, a video message by President Volodymyr Zelensky was shown on television. Local residents report the broadcast happened on at least 10 different channels. The local government in Belgorod Oblast and the head of Crimea, Sergei Aksionov, confirmed the event. Currently, there are about 5,800 Russian soldiers still stationed in Belarus, according to the main intelligence directorate of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. Russian President Vladimir Putin, during a meeting with students in Moscow, claimed while the Soviet Union withdrew its troops, Germany is still occupied by a lot of US troops. And to wrap up the news segment, the international developments. The lower house of the Italian parliament approved a government resolution that significantly simplifies the procedure for supplying Ukraine with weapons until the end of this year. The US Department of Defense plans to boost the production of artillery ammunition by 500% within 2 years. The goal is to produce 90,000 shells every month. According to Ned Price, the spokesman for the US Department of State, the corruption allegation that led to a shakeup in Ukraine's government in recent days do not appear to have involved billions of dollars in military and humanitarian aid supplied by the United States. Ukraine's defense intelligence stated on Facebook that the Baykar company has donated 2 Bayraktar TB2 drones to the armed forces of Ukraine. And now for the intelligence report segment, starting with the UK Ministry of Defense. As previously reported, Russia has worked to prepare a small number of T-14 Armata main battle tanks for the type's first operational deployment in Ukraine. However, in recent months, deployed Russian forces were reluctant to accept the first tranche of T-14 allocated to them because the vehicles were in such poor condition. It is unclear exactly what aspects of the vehicles prompted this reaction, but within the last 3 years, Russian officials have publicly described problems with the T-14's engine and thermal imaging systems. In 2021, Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu described the planned production run for 2022 as only an experimental industrial batch. Therefore, it is unlikely that any deployed T-14 tanks will have met the usual standards for new equipment to be deemed operational. Moving on to the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War. Western main battle tanks will allow Ukraine to conduct mechanized warfare and help liberate occupied territories, the researchers simply stated on this topic. Additionally, the Institute wrote that Russian Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov continues to try and portray himself as a true defender of Russia. He pointed at the Russian General Staff's historical role in guiding and protecting Russia through several military crises. The researchers argue this is to counter the growing power and influence of head of the Wagner PMC Yevgeny Prigozhin, Chechen Republic head Ramzan Kadyrov, and their respective paramilitary structures. And to end the report, the evening update by the General Staff of Ukraine. The enemy continues to conduct offensive actions in the Bakhmut direction, suffering numerous losses. In the Liman and Avdiivka directions, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive actions. All enemy attacks were repulsed. The occupiers are defending in the rest of the directions. Only in the last few days, about 100 wounded Russian invaders were brought to the Starobilsk city hospital of the Luhansk region. Due to the overcrowding of the hospital, after stabilization measures, they are transported to hospitals in the city of Luhansk or to the territory of Russia. In Horlivka Donetsk region, the occupiers are forcing employees of local so-called Republican enterprises to obtain passports of the Russian Federation. If the requirements are not met by March 1, 2023, the employees will be fired. The enemy continues to exert pressure and intimidate the local population in the temporarily occupied territories. Thus, in Jankoy district of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, the occupiers searched the homes of more than 20 families of Crimean Tatars and made 6 arrests, allegedly on suspicion of preparing sabotage and terrorist attacks. And that wraps up the news report. If you're interested in any of the articles I mentioned and want more details, links can be found in the description as always. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day. You were listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.